long before it became popular, where help in the balance of nature. Hunting is my life.
Добрый день, я Сергей Ястржембский. Надеюсь, что аудитория телеканала «Дикий» со мной знакома. По тем репортажам, которые киностудия «Ястреб фильм» делала для этого замечательного телеканала. Сегодня я нахожусь в Аруше, и здесь я собираюсь сейчас проинтервьюировать очень необычного человека, профессиональную охотницу Наташу Иллум Берг. Она и писательница, и охотница. Родилась в Швеции, но практически основную часть своей жизни проводит в Танзании, живет в Танзании, в Африке. Этим интервью я хочу начать, может быть, серию телеинтервью для телеканала «Дикий», для того, чтобы приглашать на эту площадку людей, которые многое знают об охоте, о дикой природе, о том, как нам сохранить и то, и другое. Мне кажется, что опыт, знания, мудрость этих людей очень полезны для нас всех, потому что мы могли бы использовать это для того, чтобы и в России сохранить дикую природу и ее биоразнообразие, и в том числе для интересов разумной охоты. Итак, портретная галерея на телеканале «Дикий». In what age did you hear for the first time about hunting? Maybe you have in your memoir first understanding what does it mean hunting in for your parents, I don't know, for your family, when it was?
So to ask me when I first heard about hunting is a little bit like asking somebody when they started understanding their own name. Because I grew up in a forest, I grew up with hunting, and I came along with my father, or the gamekeeper, before I even knew what was hunting. It was just life. It really started with my grandfather, who from a very, very early age was deeply interested in nature. Long before it became popular, had his very strong ideas about conservation. In the 1920s, instrumental in making sure that several birds in Sweden that were endangered, 4 different kinds of birds in Sweden, he saved from being extinct there. Because, for instance, then they saw the eagles as vermin. And in the early 1920s, he made sure that the very last eagles were not killed. So he fought for that. I guess to us, 4 generations, conservation and hunting go together. My father then later, who inherited this estate that my grandfather created because of hunting and conservation, my father then decided to bring back the European form of the bison, the wisent, to our forests. My family estate, together with WWF and the government of Russia, are bringing back some of the wisents to Russia. So it's a lovely project. My foundation, which I have with another person, for elephants in Africa, and also a project where I concentrate on trying to get information to as many people as possible about what we do to nature today and what we can do to behave better in nature.
You must remember the first day when you made a first result of shot.
we went out into the forest and we did a little bit of control work of crows. And so it was more culling than hunting, really. And my father had said to me that I had a very important job. I think I must have been maybe 4 years old or something like that. He said, the two jobs you have is, one, you're the tea lady. This is very important. So when there's a tea break, you're the one who pours us the cups of tea. Very important job. I said, okay. And he said, the other important thing is, when I shoot, you have to listen if it goes boom on the ground. And then you make a little line so that we know how many. So I took it very seriously. And I sat there, it was very cold, I sat there with my feet under the belly of the dog and counted. So now, fast forward from that. Anyway, the day came and I was 16 years old. That's how long it was in my family. And I was allowed to stand in the very back row of shooting ducks. So a duck came over that one of the other guests hadn't hit, and I hit it. And of course, you know, the duck was taken and it was stuffed and it was, you know, it was a very, very exciting day. So I do remember that.
So it was a shotgun?
Shotgun was the very first, yeah.
12 caliber, yeah?
No, absolutely not.
16.
Oh, that was forbidden in my
16,
family.
16.
20. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Why it was prohibited?
It was prohibited in my family because, again, we were very old-fashioned. And my father used to say, do you want to wing it or do you want to kill it? So, you know, it was strict.
Why your parents just gave you this very Russian name, Natasha?
Okay, so there's actually two reasons. But one of the main reasons is because when I came out, when I was born, such a loud scream, and when he pulled my legs to check me, he said, my God, this girl knows what she wants, because I was already fighting him then. And so when my mother then held me, she thought I was very peaceful. So she thought, clearly war and peace. So clearly Natasha. That's the one reason. But I got to tell you the other reason as well, because it's a very sweet reason. My father, who I loved very much, he had two daughters. So he would have this whole line of names, and he would say, but in Danish, I love you, Mary. No, it doesn't sound good. I love you, Charlotte. That doesn't sound romantic. We're romantics in my family, right? So, I love you, Natasha. Yeah, that sounds good. So, that's how he did it.
I don't think that it's honest not to speak about grandma. In India, she just was individual hunts.
Yes.
On the tiger, yeah?
Yes, yes.
So she was hunting alone.
Yes, absolutely.
Without any trackers, without
yes.
any assistance.
Absolutely. So she was alone, and what was, you know, interesting about it, of course, was when she came back from India. Darling, you shot those elephants? I mean, you shot those tigers? Are you sure you shot those tigers yourself, or was it really your husband holding her gun? Now, you know, if somebody had said that to me, you know, it clearly lies in the family. Of course, it made her furious. So when she came back to India the next time, she actually had the regional forestry or division officer write a letter in English to shut all these gentlemen up who would be so rude as to think it wasn't her alone. So that whenever they would speak again, she would go, look at that, and let's not discuss it anymore. A copy of the actual letter from the divisional forest officer saying that I hereby certify that Inger Illum, known as the Goose Girl, shot 2 full-grown tigers on the evening of the 24th of April, 1934. She was waiting for the tigers alone in the jungle over a buffalo killed by them. Both the tigers were dead on the spot.
Her name was
Inger
Inger.
Illum, yeah.
Yeah, so,
And you can see, actually, there's another photo.
Вот два снимка, посвященные охоте как раз бабушки Наташи на тигров, которые убивали домашний скот. Вот тут можно увидеть дерево и засидка, такой лабаз, организованный наверху. Она провела как раз здесь ночь, подкарауливая тигров. Это она сама, гордая и довольная, но еще не зная о том, что ее охотничьи достижения вызовут такой скепсис в просвещенной, так сказать, Европе. И вот она вернулась вновь в Индию для того, чтобы получить вот этот документ от главного лесничего офицера в этом индийском регионе, штате, когда он свидетельствует, что госпожа Ингер Иллум лично дожидалась в джунглях тигров около убитого ими буйвола, и оба тигра были добыты с одного выстрела. Такой необычный документ, который доказывает, насколько хорошей охотницей была бабушка Наташи. Неудивительно, что Наташа повторяет этот путь. Why Africa and why PH?
Since I was a child, I always heard these stories at home. And I always heard from my grandmother, from my father, people who had, and reading, of course, my grandfather's books, people who had hunted all over the world and done conservation all over the world, that if ever you wanted to really hunt an exciting animal, it would be the African buffalo. I guess there was a practical part to the whole thing, you know, the whole thing of me coming to Africa, which is before me, people would come to Africa or go to India, do their things, and then eventually come home because of the family land. But because the family land was sold, then I went to Africa and I just never came back. I'd never been to East Africa in my life, but I decided, and when I decide, that's what I do. And my darling mother, of course, you know, she started crying, but at the same time, she said, I've just been waiting for this, you know, so she's drying her tears and saying, go. I went, and I never came back. And that's, I mean, of course, I go back to visit, and my mother comes out here, but I've been here for 26 years now.
And why the PH?
So, like I said, this is what could keep me hunting, you know. I was never going to be able to afford being a client, you know, the whole time, you know. But not only that, the skills is what interests me. What interests me as a hunter is not at all to shoot the animal. I'm actually quite happy for somebody else to do that. What interests me is using my senses and tracking. You know, different hunters are different. For me, I track a lot myself. So I track a lot and I use my senses. And again, different hunters have different strengths of senses. To me, it's my nose, which of course in my family they all tease me about, because thank God you've got such a big nose, at least it can do something, you know? To me, hunting is that we have to get close, we have to make a plan, we have to, you know, do all of this to get as close as possible.
I suppose that for a lady, a young lady, it wasn't easy. It wasn't common. It wasn't easy.
No.
Maybe it was anti-tradition.
But the truth of it was that it was really, really hard, because I was actually put on the spot a few times when I was an apprentice, where I was put in positions of, unless you do this for me, we are going to follow this wounded buffalo and you won't have a gun. You may know that a wounded buffalo is pretty much, I'd say with the tiger and the polar bear, and I am told as an answer that if you do this for me, then I'll give you the gun. At the time, I was 22 or something like that. My face went dark red and I left, you know, and I had a 1 second cry about it, and humiliation, you know, it's humiliating. So I came back and I said to him, now, let me tell you something, and remember this. Here's how little I want to do this for you. So let's follow the wounded buffalo without a gun.
What was the attitude of the black people to your attempt to become PH?
Very interesting, actually.
Yeah.
First and foremost, the Tanzanian people are some of the kindest people I've met in my life, as a general rule. You take hunting tribes and you've just added another factor. Many different tribes in Tanzania that are hunting tribes. And I have just by nature, and I don't know why this is, but I immediately always pretty much get along with hunting people. I just do. When I get into trouble, I get into trouble with society. I always get into trouble with society. You know, people who have opinions and, you know, this and that. African people in the bush are not like this. They see, does she have something or does she not have something? They also know that I have traditions that are a little bit unusual, which, funnily enough, without us ever having known this, completely coincide with some of their traditions. Like when I've shot an animal, when I've been part of a client shooting an animal, let's put it this way, when I've guided for this person to shoot this animal, I have a moment where I respect the animal. So I take out the heart, you know, I cut a bit of the heart, I go away and I thank nature for having given this gift, and it's what I do. The older guys will like stop them from touching the heart, and again, it's funny because we don't speak about it. And they, you know, will then cut it and they will give it to me and I will go away, or I'll cut it myself, and they'll open, you know, whatever it is. But there's an understanding of respect for each other and for nature. I think the buffalo chose me, rather. You know, I mean, I can't... that's a very different... It's like, you know...
Writer.
Yeah, you know, it is... it's an obsession, really, I have.
Why I don't see any trophy of buffalo inside of your house?
My best trophy, which I'm going to have mounted quite soon, are my walking shoes. That's my best trophies in the world, because I have a pair of walking shoes that I have walked for so many hours on them that there's that much sole left. Those are my kind of trophies. I have two buffaloes, and sadly they are in another place, and I need to get them here. But I have the buffalo, which was the first buffalo that charged me. And I have the first buffalo I shot on my own. Those two buffaloes I have. But also you've got to remember I'm a writer. So to me, you know, everything is in there instead.
Right.
And I never had the need to...
Of show off?
Of showing off, no, because I know, you know, my passion is something else.
Much deeper, yeah.
You know, and it's like, to me, when people ask me, why are you even a hunter? What I say to them is that, to me, it is like this. One of the greatest sadnesses of being a human being, but also one of the greatest strengths, but more than anything sadnesses, is our adaptability. When you're hunting, and when you're hunting something that is dangerous, the nature of being in this instant, a creature who is part of the food chain, who is either going to hunt or be killed, in essence, forces your senses to be 100% taut the whole time. So even if you're after something for 6 hours, when you're trying to smell the buffalo, you smell the wild jasmine, you smell, you know, that the acacia is blooming. And you learn as you're doing this, because you're like, oh, what month is it? What day is it? That's blooming, and that's blooming. And you're sucked closer into your understanding of nature. When you're looking for the blood down there in the track of the buffalo, you suddenly see a kind of grass that is red that you never even knew existed. And you start questioning, what is that grass? Nobody even told me that that existed. To the root from where we sprang as human beings. And you're alive.
Africa is both hell and paradise for me, you wrote here. Why? Could you explain it?
Well, Africa is and in a sense, I shouldn't say Africa, because Africa is such a big thing, but East Africa, let's say. And it's hell because that intensity very quickly turns into death. I'd say when I look at my friends in Europe, they all live pretty happy, healthy, safe lives at the age of 45. My friends here, you know, I have friends who've been killed by poachers. I have friends who've fallen down in small airplanes. I have so many friends who've been killed in car crashes because the roads here are so bad. I have friends who've been killed by animals. I have friends who've been killed by malaria. You know, this is a place of extremities. This is a place for a passionate human being. If you're very passionate, you almost have to come to Africa at some stage of your life. But my mother told me when I was 14, she said, Natasha, you have something which is your biggest gift, and it's also going to be your biggest problem. And I was like, oh, Mom, what is it, 14 years old? She said, you know, when other people, they feel from 0 to 10, you feel from -5 to +15. So in this sense, this is Africa, so it's perfect for me.
Hunting and writing the books, how is interconnected?
My hunting is my sanity, and my writing is my, you know, soul, basically. I've written 5 books, and some of them are fiction, you know, just about, but it also often does touch upon what it just means to be a human being.
You call yourself
Conservationist Hunter.
It's quite a new definition.
Sure.
Yeah, and many people, I mean, from the hunting world, they don't understand what is it. Useful for the nature are the things that they do. Please talk about it. What's the point you put into it?
I think we've come to a time, especially now with so much anti-hunting, we've come to a time where we have to start dividing this very mottled crew who all call themselves hunters into some different categories. And the reason for that is that there really are people who call themselves hunters who are, in my view, as much as hunting is my life, seeing where help in the balance of nature is needed is equally my life. And when anti-hunters go out and attack all the hunters, in a sense, I can sometimes understand why they do it, because the hunters themselves have not been good at pushing those people out who don't follow the rules of understanding balance and understanding of giving back. I will only ever support the kind of hunting that creates a sustainable future for the area where the hunting is done. Otherwise, even I have to start questioning what we're doing. And considering that I know I'm a conservationist who give, I think, more back than I ever take, then I don't want to be put in the same bracket as those who are destroying the future of wildlife, to be quite frank with you. And considering all the power that we have to do good stuff, it is important that we become a little bit harsher towards those people and say, we don't accept you guys here. You go and do that over there. We're not in the same group.
If it's natural to be a woman and hunter, and to kill any woman, it's to give birth.
The question I will ask you back, is it such a logical question? If you look at the best hunters in the world, like lions, who do you think does all the hunting? Lions or the lionesses? These are all ideas that, you know, people have, and just the human mind, not necessarily anything to do with the nature of things. You know, maybe if I had to strangle them, it would be different, but, you know, what I have down here has nothing to do with if I shoot straight or not. It is such a typical question of nature versus nurture, because when you look at my family And when you look at what my grandmother already did, because of the inherited, how can you say, the inherited idea of what a woman can do or not do, which was then passed on to my father because his mother was that way. And nobody ever put any pressure on me to do anything. I mean, for the short while you've known me, I think you can see I'm quite a stubborn person who knows exactly what I like. The only thing I was ever offered was complete freedom.
You wrote in this book that the most uncomfortable question when you kill the animal.
So that's 20 years ago. I feel very differently for the single reason that I also much more today understand the complexities of the human soul, you know, and I allow. I promise you I've done that too, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying it's not the same thing. Here we are back to being the very core of what made us stand on two legs. So how can I turn this to at the same time being a person who does good, who at the same time takes the responsibility of being an animal with an intellect in this hunting? And that's where I then turn to the idea that, okay, you can hunt, but boy, if you do, if you take that huge thing it is to go out and take life, then you better also take responsibility for what you're doing and how to create a better future.
I'm talking and mentioned the very negative role for the nature of Hollywood production, Disney production, because they start working with our children, with young generation. They live in the cities and they don't have daily contact with nature.
Walt Disneyfication is a huge problem. It is the idea that we should watch animals, but we should not consume them. And, you know, that's fine, but there's a practicality. I've been a professional hunter in this country for 26 years. I've hunted since I was maybe 4 years old. Just give me an idea of what, because there's economics to this as well. And as long as we refuse, which we also seem to do, as long as we seem to refuse to really pretty urgently deal with the fact it is that as a species, we are breeding way too much into areas that, I mean, we need to step back a little bit here. As a matter of fact, funnily enough, I find that that is one place where China actually were very forward in their thinking. Now, sadly, that's stopped. The whole world should together start talking about our breeding problem, you know, which we're not. But as long as we don't have that under control, you know, then we have to understand that without economy in some of these very, very big areas in places like Africa, for instance, then how do we imagine that these areas are just going to stand around looking pretty? Poachers will go in and kill all the animals and cut down all the trees. Wouldn't you, if you didn't have any money and you didn't have the incentive to not do it? I mean, in conservation, whether you're a hunter or not, we have to work with what the human being is, not what we want them to be. Otherwise, we're just making little Walt Disney fairy tales.
Wild animals must have prices and value in the eyes of the Aboriginal people.
I think one doesn't really have to put a price on the heads of animals. It is that somebody pays for the pleasure of hunting somewhere. I think that, you know, if it's easier for urbanized people to understand, I think one doesn't really have to put a price on the heads of animals. It is that somebody pays for the pleasure of hunting somewhere, and that the local communities or, you know, get a part of that, whether it means that they get schools for their education,
yes,
whether it means... It is a huge point. But when you have many, many places around the world where without the economic incentive of giving a natural area of value through hunting, it will be destroyed very quickly. And I mean very, very quickly. It's just the nature of how things are. And, you know, to me, the interesting exercise is always flying over some of these hunting areas in certainly in places like Africa, but other places too. And you can immediately see where the hunting area ends and the human population begins. That's where the forest ends. That, to me, is an argument in itself. That still doesn't take it away from the hunters, that it's better to have hunting in some of those areas than not. But boy, it could get much better. It would get much better if all governments agreed with this. It could get much better if we started having cooperation with some of the conservation organizations like WWF. And it would get much better if we got rid of the killers who call themselves conservationist hunters. Because then suddenly the work that we can do as conservationists, first and foremost, who just so happen to be hunters, can be really amazing.
Doomed to fade, the wild nature and hunting?
If I see everything from a black light, then I'd say that everything historically we see with human beings is that we go in waves. The big nature organizations are not going to be intelligent to understand that it's more important to actually protect us and some of these areas than constantly thinking about the public and the money that they want, rather educating them. And that the urbanized world grows and grows and is going to become more and more anti-death. And this is going to be the beginning of a cycle that's going to make us more and more artificial. I mean, AI is coming in so much now, more and more artificial, until we get, just like the Romans, so, you know, completely disconnected from reality and so decadent. And what always happens to a society when it gets so decadent and we question so much death that in the end we're going to not be able to eat carrots, then we'll get so decadent that we will collapse. But seeing it from the positive side, the hunters will now understand to start off by cleaning up from the inside and saying, here's a group, we call ourselves Conservationist Hunters. We now divide ourselves off and we will go together with a conservationist mind and really do some great things, like properly great things for nature, so that, you know, we do the things we say, we get rid of all those people there, and then we'll start having a very open and positive bridge-building exercise with never the extremist groups, you know, who call themselves conservationists, because they also don't think, but really good, conservationist groups like WWF maybe, and we will start having exchange of science versus practical knowledge, because there's a lot to be said with that, and, you know, corporations in these areas. Maybe some of these areas can be used for both science and hunting and conservation, you know, so that we can help each other. And we also need the scientists to tell the world, and conservationists to tell the world, that what we're doing when we are conservationist hunters is good. With this cooperation, I think and this cleaning up, I think we have a chance.
Would you wish your daughter to go your way?
I would want her to really get the chance to see what it is. And it is of adamance to me. That is one of the reasons why conservation is so important to me. When I put my head on the pillow at night, whether that nearness is as a hunter or as a scientist, as a whatever, to me it's all the same, really, as long as she has that nearness. That's what I want for her.
That the dream will be realized.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So please, just at the end of this interview for Russian TV Wild, by the way, it's called Wild, give me your thoughts or wishes.
All right.
Так что вот видите, какой у нас интересный разговор состоялся. Вы можете соглашаться с тем, что сказала Наташа, можете не соглашаться. Но, как минимум, я уверен в том, что вы услышали сегодня очень много необычного об охоте, о сохранении дикой природы, о том, почему мы охотимся. Вот. Я думаю, что здесь очень много пищи для размышлений. Вот. Надеюсь, что это интервью очень необычное для российского, в том числе международного охотничьего сообщества, оно будет для вас полезно. Сергей Ястржемский, Юрий Ефремов, Аруша, Танзания. Специально для телеканала «Дикий».